All right, I think we are live. We are getting recorded. So first of all, welcome to SMB Stars, a talk show celebrating small business owners. Starting a business is bold and exciting, but it is also challenging. In this talk show, we put the spotlight on small business owners who have taken the bold step of starting out on their own, and we get an opportunity to learn from their incredible stories. My guest today is Whitney King, founder and CEO of Wave of Mind. Whitney, do you mind quickly introducing yourself for our audience?
Yes, thank you so much, Kamal. I started Wave of Mind about 5 years ago now, and really the purpose is to help people feel empowered in however is best suited for them to care for their mental health. Many of us have experienced the cycle of trying something new and it not being a great fit and not having the tools to really succeed. And then, unfortunately, the research shows that some of us end up feeling like when we fail, it's because that there's something wrong with us. And so, Wave of Mind was grown out of trying to solve that problem for myself and pulling together a team of professional therapists and utilizing the best possible resources through well studied techniques from things like clinical psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy, and forming a process and methodology that then we then tested through various years and customer feedback processes to learn how can we best empower people to derive the wisdom that they already carry within. And so it's my
Okay.
full passion to help people in that way, whether it be through a wave of mind or any other way that they feel that they can lean into their best self and feel inspired along the way.
Yeah, and it's very interesting you say that, right? Because as women, we do tend to blame ourselves for a lot of the times when things don't work out. So
Yeah.
for you to acknowledge that and build a product and now a business around it. So tell me, was there a particular moment in time when you came up with the idea, and then what was the process like? Of course, now you have this idea, and you're like, okay, I want to start a business. So when did this happen? Like, how did this all come about?
Yeah, so I would say that really the process started probably 5 or 6 years before the actual start of the business,
Ah,
where, like, when you think back, it's kind of a linear process, but it felt more chaotic at the time. I knew I
hmm.
was prone to, wanting variety and challenge, and entrepreneurship was exciting to me, but I never felt like I had really the skills to do it. And I went from being an engineer to a business development manager for a plastics company, which is very different from, of course, what I do now. But
Yeah.
it taught me that, I can help empathize with people and understand their problems and help them solve those problems. In that case, it was a very, technical process, but I learned that I could grow that business in an entrepreneurial way. And so then I decided, oh, how about I go to business school and learn, if I really can do this
Hmm.
entrepreneurship thing. Well, at the
Hmm.
same time, personally, I was noticing that, I was achieving all of my goals in a, professional setting,
Hmm.
financially, even other, external things that people could praise me for. And unfortunately, the well-being that I had internally wasn't enough to be able to accept those things. And I felt even more that I was trying to hustle my way into feeling worthy and good enough. And it just, as we now know, that's not, a winning strategy for that. And so thankfully through years of therapy, in conjunction with, these different changes for my life and my career, I was able to utilize some of the tools that are, most effective, and notice
Hmm.
that, along the way, there were some really key points where I was able to have a real paradigm shift in how I saw myself and how I saw the world and how I saw my capacity in it. And also,
Mhm.
how I wanted to show up, right? It
Mhm.
transformed a lot from, feeling like I need to prove that I'm good enough to
Mhm.
I don't need to prove that to anybody, but maybe I have something to offer that can help others feel
Mhm.
that they are also just as worthy as the rest of us. And so, as
Mhm.
those things came together and business school had lots of opportunities to try on, different business ideas and this one
Mhm.
came together there and the
Mhm.
product didn't really formulate until, well
Mhm.
after starting the business because you never really know exactly what it's going to be, but the problem to be solved was clear.
Right. That is, so tell me more about how did you come up with the product idea? Because, I'm connecting to the problem space, right?
Yeah.
A lot of us feeling like we are not good enough and, imposter syndrome is, I suffered with it for a lot of years and I know I'm not alone. There are so many of us out there. And like there is so much tele now, so there are like
Yeah.
therapists that you could talk to, but your product is very unique. You send these 6 months journals. And every month there is a different theme for the journal, and then kind of you write your thoughts. So essentially you're not talking to anyone, but you're talking to yourself through the journaling aspect. So this is a very unique product, I would say. I don't think I have come across this in the mental health space. So tell me a little bit more about how did you come up with the product idea? Like, how did that come about?
Well, I appreciate the question. It is a really interesting thing to pull together because really there wasn't a clear idea of what we were trying to create, whether it should be a product or if it should be, a digital resource or it should be,
Mm-hmm.
actually helping people understand what therapy could be for them so that, the barriers to therapy could be lessened and that the tools taught in therapy could become more
Mm-hmm.
accessible. And in working with clinicians in learning, what they see is most effective for their clients and asking them, what would be ideal if every one of your clients did this one thing
Mm-hmm.
that would contribute to them, progressing towards that
Mm-hmm.
better, stronger, more resilient state of
Mm-hmm.
mental health that they're looking for, what would that be? And of course, everyone has a different answer, but everything kind of came closer to the problem that almost is pervasive across the board, even for
Mm-hmm.
us now, even as we practice the tools that work the best for us, we still have to combat these
Mm-hmm.
ideas that we aren't good enough. And that
Mm-hmm.
in order to be good enough, in order to find a quote unquote fix,
Mm-hmm.
we need somebody else to tell us what it is that we need, what it is we should be doing, where it is that we're going wrong.
How should we
And
be feeling?
yes, exactly. And so I want to just put a very clear statement here that our business is in no way attempting to replace therapy. The
Got it.
majority of people that benefit from our product are actually, regular patients within therapy. It's not a requirement. It just
Got
happens to
it.
be that,
Got it.
people who are in therapy often seek these extra
Additional
supportive
tools.
tools.
Got it.
So, we're built such that wherever you are in your understanding of the tools that are practiced through the series of journals, you're able
Mm-hmm.
to implement them and utilize them and then continue to progress.
Yeah.
But the whole real formation of the product was, what works that we know of from the research. We know that journaling is effective for many reasons,
Yeah.
non-judgmental reflection and release and validation of one's own experience while
Yeah.
also being able to view one's own experience from a new perspective. And then we also know that there are discrete practices within, the world of self-compassion and understanding one's core values and how to build in the right structural pieces to one's life that then make practicing what is, what's best for that person, which they get to learn for themselves,
Yeah.
much more in line with what they already are leaning towards, rather than it being a constant battle of, well, I should
Yeah.
do this, or I should do that, or I should do this. So it all
Yeah.
came together, and it genuinely took years. We had multiple products along the way, but what is, serving our community now is something that took a long time to make sure that, we were empowering people with what is not only most effective, but also easiest to implement. Of course, people still need to show up and do the work for themselves, but if
Right.
you show up, you will benefit. And it's okay if every
Right.
day isn't, a 10 out of 10 insightful, peaceful moment. But as you work towards showing up for yourself and building these tools, they work 100% of the time.
Okay. Okay. That is a good point that you brought up there, which is, wave of mind is not replacing therapy, but it is in addition to, if you're working with the therapy, it's an additional tool for you.
Yes.
Um, how did you come up with the name Wave of Mind? What does it mean, and how did you think of that?
Yes, yes. So, very honestly, one of my therapists that was really impactful for me, actually, at the time of creating Wave of Mind, she
Mm-hmm.
taught me, and she actually shows up. She supports the business and helped us, and
Mm-hmm.
she's awesome. And since I'm no longer her client, I am allowed to talk about her. She could anyway. I would always allowed to talk about her, but. Um,
Mm-hmm.
her name is Jen Castillo, and she taught me this metaphor of emotions being like waves. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have a poem that we've incorporated into the journals that
Mm-hmm.
helps people visualize emotions as waves and understand that, it's not our job to control the waves, but
Mm-hmm.
to observe them and recognize that no wave is going to last forever, right?
Forever. Yeah.
What we actually know from research is that emotions last
Yeah.
about 7 seconds, right? They're often,
Wow.
yeah,
They
it's
often
crazy.
feel like forever, but
And they do. And so I'm definitely not discounting that experience because we've all had it, but it's just that
yeah.
each emotion shifts so quickly, especially if you notice the kind of
Mm-hmm.
self-talk, right? There's this
Mm-hmm.
constant kind of like fluctuation of what it
Right.
might be anger, it might be frustration, it might be some
Yeah.
version of overwhelm or exhaustion or stimulation. However you want to
Yeah.
name what it is you're experiencing, it doesn't last
Yeah.
very long.
Yeah.
But when we can recognize that that's the case, and then recognize that an emotion of any kind is neither good nor bad, we just might
Right.
feel more or less comfortable with the experience of that emotion.
Yeah.
And so recognizing this metaphor of emotions are like waves can help us all as we work through caring for our emotional well-being understand, with what we're experiencing now, how can I create more space for acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
more space to create resilience by showing myself through practice that actually every other emotion that I've experienced in the past is complete. I've experienced all of them, maybe only a little
Mm-hmm.
bit or a lot, and so has everyone else. And we're going to experience a lot more of them, and some of them are going to be really, really challenging and painful, and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make those situations that elicit those emotions okay, or
Mm-hmm.
something that we want to encourage, but just more that we can't
Mm-hmm.
control the waves that are coming our way and that we are tossed in, but we can control how we experience them to an extent, but
Mm-hmm.
even more so how we respond when something happens, right? Is it playful,
Yeah.
is it forceful, is it scary? And the point isn't to like see the next 12 waves ahead and like
Mm-hmm.
get a bunch of armor, or
Yeah.
there's for sure lots of different uh,
Yeah.
metaphors that we could utilize, but just
Yeah.
starting with that one place of we have this state of mind and this intellectualizing of, what is well-being, and we also
Hmm.
have this very embodied experience of what it is like to experience nature or, a physical, you know, vast, e- you know, even expansive, universal experience that we have no control over. And how does that provide us insight into, what I can do right now to just center myself in wherever I might find myself amongst these waves? I'm going to be okay, even though I don't know what's coming next. And even though the past was probably pretty hard and pretty painful.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that is very deep. And
Thanks to Jen. We give her the credit for that for sure.
yeah, no, thanks
Yeah.
to her for sure. And it is so true, right? Like one of the ways for me also, like it took a lot to realize that no emotional state is permanent, good,
Mhm.
high or low. And building
Yeah.
anything, you kind of go through that emotional roller coaster. So now I'm like, when I'm feeling high, I give myself the chance to feel high because I know that the
Yeah.
feeling will not last. And when I'm feeling
Mm.
low, like I give myself the permission to feel low and knowing that I'm going to be okay, but I just need this time and it's okay to take the time because it's not going to last forever. So for me, like that shift was
Mm.
very good because when I'm high, like I experience it and I know it's not going to last. When I'm low, I give myself the permission to feel low and I know it's not going to last.
Wow. That's very beautiful. And you know, just to kind of validate the experience of we feel like things are going to last forever because that's pretty much what our, conditioning, all of us have different experiences, but across the board, our society at large pretty much says if you stand still, you're in danger. We got to keep
Yes.
running,
Yes.
right? And there's
Yes.
a bunch of
Yeah.
different things that you could like take from that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
back to kind of the self-help world, even though I think most of it intends to actually be helpful, if the constant message is you're not okay and you need X, Y, or Z to be okay, you need to listen to this advice, you need to do this perfectly. If you don't do all of these things perfectly and you don't feel well, it's because you failed, right? All of
Yeah.
those are, incorrect. The
Mhm.
truth is we're all humans trying our best, and if we try a
Yeah.
few things every now and then and work towards, greater insight and utilizing the strength that we already have, that's where, even more growth comes. But the
Yeah.
fact that we think that everything's going to last forever is because that's really what we've learned. And the message is like, don't stay where you are because one,
Yeah.
it's not good enough. And two, the message is that, oh, I've got to keep hustling so that then I can be happy.
Yeah.
And you think,
That's
okay, then you'll be happy and then you'll forever be happy, which has never
yeah.
happened to anybody.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah.
it's really hard. It's it breaks my heart that there are so many of us, even, people close to me, and, I experience it now, every now and then too, where you're doing the best you can and you still feel like it's not enough or that you're not enough. And
Yeah.
we got to change that. And we can
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Now, let's pivot a little bit into the building of the business. So tell me about how, as a small business owner, like it's really tough, right? To start out on your own. You quit your job. How did you fund your business in the beginning when, of course, you had zero customers? How did you land your first customer? What was that
Yeah.
like? I mean, if someone is trying to start out or even thinking about starting out, like that is the
Yeah.
first thing. Like, what do I do? How do I fund my business? How do I get customers? So how did you go about it?
Yeah. So I'm going to share with you, the honest truth. And I think that
Please.
hopefully there's going to be insights that people can take from it, but also the way that I think of it is really full of, gratitude and appreciation for kind of the combination of things that helped me to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do what I did. That if I hadn't had,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have at least had this path. It would have looked a lot different. So the first
Okay.
thing was, I was in business school and I had, because of, my experiences, which prior to that, there's lots of reasons, I was able to go to good university, and
Mm-hmm.
um, the business school was, mostly paid for via scholarship, and I lived in a place that wasn't that expensive, and
Mm-hmm.
I had savings from my previous, sales job to really carry me through what I was doing while, also working. I worked, within the venture capital private equity space while I was in business school. And so made money while learning what it's like to, observe other people running their businesses and seeing, from my perspective and asking other people, well, did that work, or did that work? Or if it did
Mm-hmm.
work, why did it work? And also, was that really a reasonable attribution or not, right? It's a really interesting thing to study. Anyway, all of these things, but also the business school gave me opportunities to test business ideas, and through competitions, that by being a part of the winning group of businesses from that competition, I was given seed money by the
Oh,
university.
that is fantastic.
Yeah,
That is
it's
fantastic.
it's just exactly. It's amazing, and they also put
Mm-hmm.
me into, a startup accelerator that was run by volunteers that were connected to the university. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just got not only early funding, which wasn't a ton, but it was still very
Still,
meaningful.
yeah.
And then also the right, you know, support to get some feedback early on from this community within that
Mm-hmm.
accelerator to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
get past some of those early bumps that probably would have taken me a lot longer to get through had
Mm-hmm.
I been trying to figure it out on my own.
Okay.
And it was also, 2020, it was the pandemic. So the fact that we could do all of that virtually and I wasn't just sitting, you know, on my
You were
computer by
busy.
my, yeah, so all of those things, and just, I think my life structurally,
Mm-hmm.
I was single at the time, and I had a friend who said, hey, my grandpa has a basement, and, you know, the family wants someone to live there just to make sure he's okay at night. So I had a free place to live, and, like there was,
Cool.
I could have taken on another job to supplement my income, but I didn't have to. And all of those things meant I could put more and more energy towards the business. And, my founder early on, my co-founder, she was, a huge support. And, you know, that first customer that we had, of course, we cried and we were so excited. And, our first product was also only $25, but that $25 was for sure the most meaningful $25 I've ever earned.
For sure, for sure. Oh my gosh, that is an amazing story with the competition and being able to find your seed money through the competition. Yeah, that is fantastic. All right, so now kind of like growing the business, right? Um, as the founder in the last 4 years, I'm sure you have worn many different hats. And some
Yeah.
days you're thinking about sales, the other days you're thinking about, the product, the other day you're thinking about something else. So how do you juggle with all these different roles, and how do you make sure you are sane and focused, and kind of like being able to manage through all of that? Because as a small business owner, that is one of the you don't have a lot of resources, you don't have a big team,
Yeah.
you don't have departments, it's a small team, and you're juggling through a lot of things. So what has worked for you?
So there's a lot of things that have worked. There's more things that haven't. There's definitely a lot more things I've tried that haven't worked than that have. But I
Okay.
guess the overall answer is that because this business is something that I have deep passion for and that I
Mm-hmm.
consider, a privilege to be able to work towards, because the
Mm-hmm.
people who benefit from Wave of Mind are people who actually have improved experiences of their lives in various aspects. And so getting those feedback, touch points, messages, videos from customers or therapists who have helped clients who've utilized it and found it helpful. It's such a rewarding thing to do. And so,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, all of the how does one figure out how to scale efficiently, it's constantly changing. I could come up with a really good story of it goes like this and goes like this and then it goes like this, but
Yeah.
it's just a lot of, I need to check my own assumptions. I need to surround myself with good people and
Mm-hmm.
try to do my best to be a good leader within my business and
Mm-hmm.
empower my team with what they need. And that's a learning process too, right? I'm learning how to run the business while also learning how to make sure my team has everything they need. And um, all of that to say is I'm approaching each day as someone who has worth, that I know I have something to offer, but enough
Mm-hmm.
humility that I don't have the answers to anything. I just have good ideas that I can test and, pull in the right people to make sure that my ideas are not really the ideas. They're just a contribution to hopefully what will eventually be what works. And it's the mission that keeps that process, full of energy rather than something that can at times feel tiring
Okay.
and confusing.
Okay. 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 Now that is really nice. Do you have any specific things that you do that has worked well for you and could potentially work well for, our listeners, people looking to start out on their own?
So I think what I learned over, honestly, the 2 years of really hardcore product and experience,
Mm-hmm.
development and improvement and gaining customer feedback was that no matter how much I wanted something to be, that
Mm-hmm.
was not really that important as much as is what we are working towards, what the people who really need us are asking for. Even if they don't actually know that they're
Mm-hmm.
asking for it, how do we find them? How do we talk to them? How do we make sure that we're not just running for the sake of running, but we're running as hard as possible while also making sure that we have, clear insights into, are we going in the right direction and do we have the
Mm-hmm.
discipline to turn around
Mm-hmm.
if we're wrong.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that might not be that clear, but I guess the clear point is
Mm-hmm.
you can succeed as a entrepreneur if you keep trying. Just
Yeah.
don't try too hard to make a specific thing work. Try really
Yeah.
hard to make the the effect or the purpose or
Yeah.
the overall um, impact of what you're trying to achieve. You can achieve that, but
Yeah.
how you do that requires a lot more
Yeah.
testing and a lot more
Yeah.
creativity, and
Yeah.
it's okay if
Yeah.
it takes time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think those are two very good pieces from you, right? One is progress over perfection. And that is a mantra
Yeah.
I follow too, because you can get really caught up in what is perfection anyways? Like how do you define that something is perfect?
Yeah.
For me, all about progress over perfection. And two is, it's very important, don't get caught up on how you get there, and having your eyes set on the price. and then
Yeah.
iterating along the way, because as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to do that. Things never, never pan out the way you think they're going to pan out. That just never
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. Could perfectly
Yeah.
said. The
Yeah.
perfect thing is hard. Like I
Yeah.
think it's less of a focus, but I do have to catch myself of, oh,
Yeah.
am I actually avoiding something that I didn't know I was avoiding because I'm worried that I won't be perfect at it. And
Yeah.
then I realized,
Yeah.
oh, I've actually been imperfect a lot and it's okay. But you have to push yourself, and I think that having, people
Yeah.
around you who will help you
Yeah.
as you're challenging yourself
Yeah.
in that way can be
Yeah.
helpful. And so I think things like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
community that you're creating really help with
Yeah.
people as they work towards, improving
Yeah.
in that way, improving at failing more often, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, failing more often and feeling comfortable with that.
Yeah,
Awesome. All right, so let's pivot to our next question. Work in technology, so I don't think this podcast will be complete if we didn't talk about
yeah.
how you use technology in your business, how particularly around like digital tools. Do you do digital marketing? How do you reach out to your customers? Because that is another thing, right? We all live in a digital world now, and a lot of small business owners
Yeah.
are trying to figure out ways of connecting with their potential customers, building
hmm
awareness, creating that dialogue via digital channels. So, what tools have worked well for you, and how do you do it at Wave of Mind?
So there's a lot of things that I think that my marketing team could add insight here, um,
Mhm.
that I won't cross over into, because in all truth, social media is terrifying to me. And I've
Mhm.
tried a bunch of different ways to really take the lead on growing the business
Mhm.
in that space. And it's just not it's just not where I excel.
Mhm.
And so having the right team and making sure that I'm applying, what I can to help the marketing team be resourced with not
Mhm.
only all of the feedback that we have, but the understanding of the product and how our market benefits from what we offer, but also just helping them as they are working towards achieving what they are great at, but I can still be of support. I think one thing that is really helpful, or I'm involved, is in the direct relationships with partners and, even affiliate partnerships
Mhm.
where, yes, that's part of social media, but to me, it's more about um, connecting and making sure that there is a genuine and authentic understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve and making sure that we're offering to support to our partners and that they feel that they're in line with their values as they work with us. And so I think AI has been really helpful in refining the process of finding new affiliates and making sure our communication to them is clear. And of
Mhm.
course, the marketing team has been of support in this too, and making sure that our resources for our partners are well organized and that our brand designer, we're utilizing, the, excellent branding that they created for us and really streamlining that process so that when our partners are interacting with our brand, that it's seamless and that our communication to them is clear and that they understand that we value them for what they do. And, for example, many of our affiliates on Instagram are therapists. And so we're not in any way trying to interfere with their therapeutic process or get them to say, you know,
Mhm.
one specific thing, but we are trying to help them um, understand the resources that we have available and make sure that they get to try the product. And if they have questions, great, we're happy to help. and there's like not a scarcity pressure focus around that part of growing the business, because that is a very specific thing to me that's important. Whereas, many other aspects of marketing for other businesses involve, a lot of, we need to get people to feel a certain way right now that will get them to open their wallet. And not only am I not okay with that as a person, but also the self-help world is doing that enough. And we're not trying to compete in that space, because actually what we offer is transcending time. It will be valuable 10 years from now. We hope people make the choice to take on the experience of journaling through Wave of Mind, but we're also just providing that education so that people can know if it's right for them. So I'm contributing there by utilizing AI and different CRM tools to organize the conversations and keep our brand consistent. And so I think doing so makes the execution of those things clearer, and that, adopting different language so that people know that they're talking to a real person. We're actually not automating the messages themselves, but just the process of, how do we reach, a good number of people, but also the ones who are likely to resonate with what we have to say anyway.
Right. And that's a fantastic point you brought up, Whitney, which is, you talked about how for you, marketing is communicating and building connections with, influencers and with your customers. And as opposed to like buy now or an immediate sale, which so often people are so focused on that final conversion that they forget that there are many different steps before that conversion. All right. And I guess the last question is, what is one thing about you that people don't know and will surprise them? If you feel
I think something that doesn't come through in my professional interactions is just how, honestly, kind of silly I am on a day-to-day basis, right? That's weird to say, but the healing process that brought me to creating Wave of Mind, and that I continue to this day, allows me to really just lean into what is authentic. And sometimes that's weird and silly, and I'll tell jokes that only I find funny because the context of the joke is in my head and I didn't explain it. And I didn't care to explain it because it just was for me to laugh. And thankfully my friends are generous and kind, and they don't put me down for it.
I love that.
Everyone has their own way of being, and if you can really find comfort within yourself, you're going to be better off in all aspects of life. And one of the things that I'm more comfortable with now is just being a weirdo sometimes.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
You're
Whitney,
welcome.
thanks so much. This was such a great conversation. I enjoyed so much chatting with you, and thank you for sharing your story and how you got started, and honestly for being candid. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Kamal. I really appreciate what you do, and super excited about this community. So thanks so much for today's conversation.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.